Hi everyone again, and hope you're having a great summer. And just thought this would be the final and fourth part of my vlogs about my trip up to Harris, Lewis and Skye back in March. I cannot recommend them enough. If you're a landscape photographer, they are iconic places to go, and I had a fantastic trip for 7, 8, 9 days. And I totally recommend it. And I thought what I was going to do, as I mentioned on the third vlog, I'm just going to give you a little maybe top 10 tips for if you're planning a trip up there, things I've found that have really helped me on this and other trips. And this isn't going to be about the cameras or the lenses or even the bags, etc. that I carry. It's more about the smaller stuff that I think makes a really big difference to the trip. And things I've learned over quite a few years of doing wildlife and landscape trips abroad and in this country that just make your life a little bit easier when you're out on the road and on location. So I hope it helps. So here we go, a quick top 10 tips for any landscape trip up to the Hebrides. Tip one, I would say just about the area, guys, really plan your trip carefully. The Hebrides are quite a long way away. They take longer to get to, they take longer to get around, and I really think it's worth planning. There aren't many ferries in the winter. For instance, on the Sunday when I came back in March from Talbot to Skye, there was only one ferry on the Sunday. So be aware you have limited transport links. Similarly, the accommodation, a lot of the B&Bs on Skye and on Harris and Lewis, they close in the winter. They make enough money in the summer, they don't need to be. So for us poor photographers, there are still some great places. I'd recommend the Harris Hotel in Talbot, was fantastic. And similarly, there's lots of others I put in the details on the vlog about places I've stayed. So really plan your trip. As I say, I think so limited ferries, the driving distances, and just allowing yourself enough time to enjoy the trip. There's nothing worse than rushing. So that's my first tip. Don't rush, plan your trip carefully, and you'll be much more successful with your photographs. Tip 2, I think, is going to be a fairly strange one. Car seat covers. Yep, I know, a bit strange, but you'll be getting soaking wet at some point on the trip. You'll be wearing wet, sort of waterproof clothing, will be dripping. You'll have sand and mud on your boots or Wellingtons. Your camera gear will be wet, and you jump in and out of the car. You're escaping the storms, moving locations. You don't want to be constantly taking all your gear off and off again, on and off. I really recommend you just get some of those cheap car seat covers. If you're driving, obviously, I've got a 4x4. You can either use, if you've got towels, you can pack those. I pack those in the back of my car as well, but I put those on the back seat. The front 2 seat covers have got seat covers on, and the boot in my 4x4 has got a big lining, so really protects your car. You'd be amazed how much sand and water gets in the car when you're photographing up there. Just in case you're wondering where we are, I'm in a fantastic wildflower meadow in Kent. It's blowing a bit of a gale, but I thought this would be more fun than doing it in my office. So I hope you don't mind, and I hope you can hear me okay above the 15-mile-an-hour gusts. Tip number 3, I would say, is before you go, try and read a guidebook about where you're going. This is one by David and Charles, written by Francis Thompson, about Harris and Lewis. It's really detailed. It's all about the people, the history, the geology, the wildlife, everything. Really good book. Doesn't cost so much. I got that secondhand on Amazon for about £8. Similarly, what I would say, having maps and a compass really help. The compass only if you're going off the beaten track a little bit, but the maps really do give you an idea of where you're going. You can plan your routes. You also find places. I found places, one bay in particular wasn't mentioned on any photographic websites I'd seen. Beautiful little bay where you may remember I did some photographs of some shifting sands. Nobody there. Tiny little car parking space, which I just found on the map. You can see the cliffs behind me. Massive waves still breaking out there. So yeah, tip number 3, definitely guidebooks and maps really help. Right, tip number 4 I would say is waterproof covers. You may have seen this or something similar in one of my vlogs. It's not so much the wind, it's not even the rain. The cameras nowadays are weather sealed. It's the sea spray, the salt and the sand that gets everywhere. Often you'll be sitting somewhere, you'll get your composition right, a squall comes through, just batten down the hatches and wait. You need something to cover up your filters, your your camera, keep the worst of it out. These are great. This, you can see, is obviously one I use for wildlife and things sometimes. Just as good though, get a big shopping bag, a plastic carrier bag, 2 or 3 rubber bands, put it right over the top, open both ends, cut off, open one end, 2 rubber bands. That will keep everything dry, cheap as chips, and works really well. Tip number 5, I do carry everything in these little organizer bags. These are made by Think Tank. They're really good, different sizes. This is my go-to one that I use, carry in every bag. I always have it ready to go. I never forget it. It's got everything in it. Tip number 5 though, is one of the things is always in here, lens cloths. Okay, take more than you think you'll need. They get wet, they get salty, they need to be washed out. I always take 8 or 10. You can get them online again really quite cheaply, good ones. You make sure you get a good quality one that is designed for camera lenses, not just a cleaning cloth. You want to make sure it's of small enough fibres that it is for cameras. So tip number 5, take loads and loads of camera cloths. Right, tip number 6 is really more about clothes. I won't go into the details. We all know, if you're into hiking and camping, use the stuff, go for layers, base layer, thermals if need be, fleeces, decent trousers and over trousers. Obviously really good waterproof outer gear. I've always stuck to a few makes like Rab I found really good, but people know what they like, and they say if you've been hiking you'll know what works for you. But there's a few little other things you can actually get as well that really do make a difference. First thing I would say, big question, do you wear wellies or do you wear walking boots? I found I wear both. If you go to the beaches you want Wellingtons. But if you want any of the rocks, Wellingtons are not great for grip, and I would always recommend you wear your walking boots. Then of course you've got the danger of water coming in. If you can, get a pair of waterproof socks. They're brilliant, they act as normal socks anyway. These are by Sealskin, they're not cheap, but they do last a long time. So I wear my walking boots with these. The waves can come over the top of your feet, go in your boots, but your feet stay dry. Really important, there's nothing worse than having cold, wet feet for the rest of the day if you don't have clean ones and things. So waterproof socks are a good idea. Just sticking to the clothes idea as well. This is a snood. You may have seen me wearing this in the video at some point. Morning, Harris, day 3. But you can get them different colours, but they're really good. Obviously it's a neckerchief, but it does keep the wind and the salt and the rain out of your shirt or your jumper or your fleece or whatever. Really useful. Gloves, always a difficult one. I recommend 3 different types of pairs. For the vast majority of stuff, I find fingerless woolen mittens are the best. They're cheap, they're cheerful, they're really by far the warmest, but as everyone I know is saying now, they're not waterproof. You're right. So if it's exceptionally wet, you can use waterproof ones. I find them fairly fiddly. You can get ones that have removable fingertips and thumb tips, so you can get at your camera. I generally find if it's so wet that I can't use these woolen ones, which keep me warmer, if it's that bad, I either put my hands in my pocket or I'm probably back in the car. If it's that bad, I'm just sitting and waiting. So we'll see. The other thing I'd say, sorry about the plane going over, is if it's incredibly cold, get online. Army surplus stores are fantastic. These are German Army tank drivers winter mittens, would you believe? They cost me about £7 on eBay. They're really good. I bought the last 3 pairs from one particular store, but there's lots of other places. Go for Swedish and German stuff if you can. Apparently that's meant to be better than the British and American stuff, and I suppose given the weather they have in Sweden that might make sense. Okay, tip number 7, what would that be? That would be, I would suggest, get a waterproof cover for your bag. I know these are meant to be waterproof, but this keeps the sand off, the spray off. Area around here that I can. They're absolutely invaluable. Some have it built in. This is a low pro. all-weather bag, and it has it built in, which is the best type if you can, so you don't lose them. They do have a habit of going missing. Covers your whole bag over. No brainer. It makes a huge difference. Once your bag gets wet, it does slowly seep through, no matter what the manufacturers say. If it's bad enough, it does. So those are brilliant. And I say, as much as anything, it's for the salt, keeping it off the zips, etc. So definitely do that. Okay. Tip number 8, I would term under a category of what I would call tools. And things that when you do forget them, create a bit of a problem. What am I going to say? The obvious one is, even though everyone recommends it, is a decent Leatherman tool, or a multi-tool. One of these gizmos that does a bit of everything. Pliers and blades and screwdrivers and all sorts of things. That was absolutely invaluable this trip for various reasons. So yeah, a decent multi-tool. The other thing I'd say is make sure you've got a head torch. They're not that expensive these days, and there's quite a few places where you're out on the cliff tops. A couple of times I was out late at night. Just notice you can actually still see the sunset going on through the trees there. It's virtually pitch black as I'm walking back to the car. You're on your own, you're walking down a dark path, there might be cliffs, there might be rivers, whatever. It's just a no-brainer. I actually carry a really old spare with me. I'm always paranoid that one's going to go, and believe me, when you're in Harris in March, there aren't many places when you can go and buy one of these. Stornoway maybe, but nowhere else. So I carry an old spare. And the other thing is Allen keys. Don't forget your Allen keys. These are what tighten up your tripod and your lens plates, etc. Absolutely invaluable. Make sure you've got the right ones. To go with all your gear. It's amazing how the weather in Harris will, if there's a weak point in your gear, it will find it. So yeah, that's what you need, Allen keys. Okay, now tip number 9, apps for your phone. I mentioned in my third vlog when I was on Skye the fantastic sunset I got at Talisker, which you may remember. Well, that sunset, I'd done really quite a lot of research. It always looks quite random when you look at it on the vlog, but I've spent a lot of time working out which beach, which part of Skye. I knew Talisker Beach already, but I looked at it on TPE, the Photographer's Ephemeris, and I could work out exactly the sun was going to set in a good place. It wasn't going to be bad. I didn't know, you can never know how the light's going to fall, but I didn't want it right in my face. I didn't want it behind the sea stack. I wanted it to be a nice setting sun, which is exactly what I got. Similarly, I'd used a tide app. There's various ones around for the tides to work out if the tide will be right out. At Talisker, for instance, if the tide's right out, there's a lot of sand and sort of messy stuff between the rocks and the water, and it doesn't really work. You want the big boulders, you want the water coming over that. So I timed it so that the tide had come in and was just receding from a high tide, which also means you can follow it down. You're not getting wetter and wetter all the time. So that worked really well, but I had researched it. So apps for your phone, there's plenty around for photography ones. They all help, but those are the two I'd say are your minimum: the TPE and anything really good for your tides. Right, we got there, everybody. I'm sure you're bored as anything by now. But tip number 10, I'd say, if you're going up to the Hebrides, this applies obviously for other fairly wild and windy places as well, is just a little list of sort of accessories that you might not think of. The obvious ones I would say, and I should say now, I keep all of my gear in different size bags. If you open your camera bag and everything's loose, the sand gets in, the salt gets in, the spray gets in, rain gets on them. At least this way, right, I just want that. So you can target the bag you want. So this one, for instance, this is for the Canon G7X, which is filming this. This is a charger for that, the batteries, USB chargers, and it's what I call in-field for that. Similarly, from some of my GoPro stuff, I keep that in there. This is for all my chargers, so this doesn't always go out with. This is also the charger for my drone. Again, goes in one of these. So most of the time it's not open, so I know it's safe and protected. Now this is the magic one that goes everywhere. And this is really my emergency bag, the things that I need that I might have need for at any given point. It's always in the top of my of my camera bag or my rucksack, whatever I'm taking with me. What do I have in here? The things I would say that are essential are, putting those away now, gaffer tape, absolute no-brainer. This will repair a rip in your trousers, it will repair your tripod. My tripod got wrecked in Harris, I've got to get this fixed. These rubber feet, 2 of them got pulled up, literally tied in the sand, going into the sand on the beaches all the time, meant that these actually got ripped off. And of course they were then suddenly, they were an open tube, the sand and salt water was going in. It was a nightmare. I had to clean them all that night, and if I hadn't had some black tape, I could then, I wouldn't have been able to seal these up and effectively bung them up and make a sort of foot, and also keep this one on tight. So I've got to get some new legs for this, but absolutely essential, take some black tape with you, black sticky tape. The other thing I would say, get some hand warmers. They're brilliant, they're cheap, disposable. Put one in each glove. These will last for 8 or 10 hours. These are the disposable ones rather than reusable. I find these get much warmer, much quicker, and they last longer than the reusable ones. So, and how often do you use them? Not very often. So I just find they're better. I think I've had this pack. There's only 5 pairs. I'm going to use 2 in about the last 2 trips. So both to Scotland. Yeah, get about 8 to 10 hours of heat, so get some of those. And the other thing I'd say you often don't see is a bungee cord. You often, when it's that windy, you often hear people say, oh, don't forget you get your tripod, here's your tripod up, and you attach your camera bag to the bottom. And the number of times I've seen people in windy places with a camera bag hanging off the bottom of their tripod. The point with that is, if the wind, that will then act as a very heavy sail, and what you want is an anchor. So this bungee cord does exactly what you'd think. It attaches onto your tripod, and then that goes down and attaches to, you want your camera bag to be flat on the ground like this. You want this to be flat on the ground. You put that on the handle, it goes down, and this then acts as a really solid anchor. The tension's pulling down your tripod, and it works much better. This is so don't just hang this on your tripod. Use one of these, stretches down. There are £1.50, £2 from somewhere like a Halfords, and I've used that regularly. Funny enough, I didn't use it so much this trip because I often had my tripod, when it was really windy, quite low down anyway, but that makes a big difference. But it's much better than, and it's adjustable. You can put the camera bag at an angle so it's in against the wind, etc. So really useful. And the other thing I say is keep organised with these sort of things. Obviously the logical things that take lots of batteries. I have spare batteries in here for all sorts of bits and bobs. But I hope that's all been of some help for you. It was a fantastic trip. I cannot recommend Harris and Lewis enough. Whether you're into landscape photography or just seeing spectacular Scottish scenery, I think you'll find it's fantastic. I hope you have a great trip, and if you do manage to go up there. And I'll leave you with a few of the images that didn't make it onto the previous 3 vlogs, and love to hear your comments. There'll be a button up here somewhere probably where you can subscribe if you'd like to, and hopefully I'll be pushing out some more vlogs in the near future. Until then, enjoy your photography, and hope to see you again soon. Cheerio. Not bad, eh? It's going to be difficult to leave with the weather like this, but as you say, given we've had snow, sleet and hail and 60-mile-an-hour winds this week. If you do come, prepare for absolutely everything. And although this is rubbish for photography, well, not ideal, it's not rubbish, it's not ideal, you can get round it. And to be honest, who's going to come here and actually criticise for the end of March having beaches like that behind me, and mountains like that over there, and the sea like that as well. So, from Rossamel near Luscombe, Ian Harris signing off for now.